What if David Tennant had listened to his agent and turned down the role of the Doctor? What if Stephen Fry had written an episode about a Green Knight? And what if J.K. Rowling had starred in an episode of Doctor Who? Believe it or not, all of those things were either planned, written, or seriously considered. To find out how we went from all of that to the era we got, let's discuss the original plans for the 10th Doctor. Tennant was starring in Russell T Davies' series Casanova, when Davies and executive producer Julie Gardner invited him to their house in Manchester. They showed him early cuts of the episode Rose and Dalek from Series 1. Tennant thought that he was just getting a sneak peek at the new show they were making, because he was a fanboy of Doctor Who. But then, out of the blue, they sprung the question. Julie led the way, asking if he'd ever be interested in playing the Doctor. According to Davies, there was a pause, and then Tennant said, "I want a coat down to there," pointing at his ankles. Davies thought, we got him. But it turns out things could have gone very differently. About 48 hours after they asked him, Tennant wasn't sure if he was going to do it. His agent at the time told him, "Don't touch it, it's not going to work." Fortunately, Tennant didn't take that advice. It's difficult, if not impossible, to imagine the modern era of Doctor Who without David Tennant. He went on to become one of the most beloved Doctors in Doctor Who's history. Period. There's no denying that. Once Tennant was cast, the character began to take shape through a series of creative battles and compromises. The costume department originally intended for the 10th Doctor to wear Japanese army boots, but Tennant was insistent with the idea of him wearing Converse trainers. Tennant pushed for the trainers because he felt they made the character more accessible, more contemporary, more cool. The costume department eventually decided he can keep the shoes. David Tennant's era was supposed to include some wildly different stories. One of the most intriguing was The Green Knight by Stephen Fry. The episode was set in the 1920s and would have been about the legend of the Green Knight. Fry actually attended the first Series 2 read-through and worked on drafts for what could have been episode 11. However, due to budgetary constraints, the episode was moved to Series 3, but Fry, with no time to rewrite the episode due to his commitments to the TV series Kingdom, allowed the team to withdraw the episode. But imagine what a Stephen Fry penned Doctor Who episode would have looked like. I'm sure the script is still out there. I have a soft spot for Stephen Fry, and I just would have liked to have seen what this story would have been like. Another unmade story was the Unalive exhibition by Mark Gatiss. This episode would have seen a Nazi task force in London's Natural History Museum, which would have been overrun by monsters. It was originally written for Series 3 with Martha Jones as a companion, and then moved to the third episode of Series 4 and was rewritten to include Donna Noble. But the episode was removed from the schedule when Russell wanted to pursue the Fires of Pompeii idea instead. Gatiss eventually used the World War II setting for his next story, Victory of the Daleks, and the museum elements were incorporated into the Big Bang. It's a perfect example of how ideas in Doctor Who never truly die. And then there was Century House, written by Tom McRae for Series 3. The Doctor was to appear on a live broadcast of Most Haunted, investigating a house haunted by the Red Widow. I just looked it up and Most Haunted is an actual show. I might be living under a rock for not having heard of that show. I live in Australia, so it's, we're on a rock far away from everywhere else. Martha Jones would have been watching this show at home. But the episode didn't fit the production schedule and was pushed back to Series 4, with the show now being watched by Donna Noble and her mother Sylvia. But due to dissatisfaction with the premise, it was replaced with Davies' masterpiece Midnight. So this story never actually saw the light of day. But if you are desperate to hear it, it exists now as a Doctor Who audio drama called No Place. And once again, J.K. Rowling almost became part of Doctor Who. Late in the 10th Doctor's run, Davies didn't want Rowling to just write an episode, he wanted her to star in one. The idea involved a villain with the ability to bring famous storytellers' creations to life, which was later turned into Rowling actually falling into the Harry Potter universe thanks to a minion of the Trickster. Davies thought they'd had Charles Dickens and William Shakespeare on the show, why not bring another famous British author? There were also wishes that they could one-up Kylie Minogue's appearance in Voyage of the Damned with another celebrity. But David Tennant, fearing a jumping the shark moment and perhaps concerned that it would be viewed as too self-indulgent since he appeared in the Harry Potter movies, convinced Davies to drop the idea. Thank goodness for David Tennant, and him and JK went on to be lifelong friends. Even the episodes that made it to screen went through massive changes during development. In Series 2, New Earth originally had the face of Bo dying, and the only way for the Doctor to cure all human diseases was to euthanize them. But then Russell read Stephen Moffat's introduction segment in the Season 1 shooting scripts book, in which Moffat mocked Davies, saying he creates interesting characters and then melts them. This made Russell decide to have everyone survive instead. For Tooth and Claw, rumour has it that the Doctor and Rose were both supposed to have fake Scottish accents and then forget to use them when the action started. But due to Billie Piper's terrible Scottish accent, that put an end to that plan. School Reunion originally had the Krillitanes all be winged, but otherwise humanoid in their appearance. Their design drastically changed during development into the bat-like creatures we ended up with. Another rumour suggests Stephen Moffat pitched a story for Series 2 where the Doctor would be held on trial by time gods for interfering with time. Davies said no to the pitch because he didn't want gods in the show. I mean, how ironic is that considering, how prominent that gods were in Davies' second era? Anyway, the Age of Steel originally had a much more depressing ending. The link between the TARDIS and the parallel universe would be just sufficient to allow the Doctor to take his Jackie there to be united with the other Pete, while Rose elected to continue traveling with the Doctor. Russell T Davies subsequently felt that was too depressing a choice to confront with Rose at this stage of the season, especially given that the alternate world would be revisited in the finale. In The Idiot's Lantern, the Doctor was supposed to have a line about having trouble with radio transmitters, which was supposed to be a reference to Legopolis, where the Fourth Doctor fell from a transmitter to his death. Mark Gatiss also wrote this script with the Ninth Doctor in mind. Ooh, one of my lights went out, that's cool. For the Impossible Planet in the Satan Pit, the Slovene were originally going to return, or more specifically, another family from Rassicoricophalopatorius. But Davies felt that the returning monster would be too distracting. In Doctor Who magazine, Davies revealed that they considered dozens of options for what would be in the pit. One was the Master, another was Davros. They eventually settled on Satan himself. Davies also mentions in The Writer's Tale that the cliffhanger in an early draft would be Rose getting possessed by the beast, which he loved, but it was subsequently discarded. One of the best episodes of all time, Love and Monsters, was originally about a female fan who was obsessed with the Doctor and essentially stalking him. But with many strong female characters already conceived for this season, Davies decided to replace the female stalker with a more well-intentioned man named Elton. And here's one that changed Doctor Who's history. Russell T Davies said had he seen Freema Agyeman's performance as Adiola in Army of Ghosts sooner than he actually did, he would have written the story so that she survives, and Adiola would become the Doctor's new companion. Unfortunately, by the time Davies was actually able to visit the set and see her, she had already filmed her death scene. The resulting compromise was to cast Agyeman as Martha Jones and write a few lines establishing that Martha is Adiola's identical-looking cousin. It's flimsy, but it works. For Series 3, Smith and Jones originally had a set piece where the Doctor and Martha flee the Jadoon by scaling down the outside of the hospital on a window cleaner's cradle. It had to be cut for time, but was later resurrected for Partners in Crime. The Shakespeare Code originally had a scene where the Doctor casually undressed down to his underwear and obliviously invited Martha to share a bed. It was rewritten as the producers and David Tennant thought it would be inappropriate. Thank God for David Tennant, that would have been crazy, but not as crazy as the amount of people that actually watch these videos that aren't subscribed. If you've gotten any value out of this video, please consider subscribing. It's free and it actually means the world to me. Thank you, I appreciate it. Back to the video. The Lazarus experiment had Professor Lazarus originally working on developing an invulnerable synthetic skin. This was dropped because Russell feared it might be too similar to Spider-Man 3, which was due to release around the same time. Stephen Moffat was actually supposed to write a two-parter in Series 3, but was too busy with other commitments. He offered to write the season's Dr. Light episode instead, which turned into the masterpiece Blink. For Blink, at one point Sally would have been seen to be pregnant at the episode's conclusion, but Moffat decided it was more effective to delay Sally and Larry's romance until after her meeting with the Doctor. Moffat also revealed he considered an alternate, bittersweet ending where Sally ends up trapped in the past. The Series 3 finale went through changes too. Utopia originally had Future Kind all traveling around on quad bikes, but this was abandoned due to safety issues. For The Sound of Drums, Davies decided against bringing back the Master's tissue compression eliminator, despite his fondness for it, feeling he had enough tricks to use against the Doctor. And in The Last of the Time Lords, Davies had written a scene where the Master would mockingly thank the Doctor for getting Harriet Jones out of office in the Christmas invasion, making it easier for him to take over. He decided to leave this out because he was concerned it was too depressing for an already bleak episode. Now on to Series 4. Early on in development for Partners in Crime, Russell T Davies was writing Penny Carter as the new companion before Catherine Tate agreed to come back and reprise her role as Donna. Davies also considered setting the story in suburban London with a spaceship sealing off a section of the city under an enormous dome while an alien was hunted through the streets. He later expressed relief that this was dropped when he realized it was the exact same idea as the Simpsons movie. Wilfred Mott was only supposed to be a small character appearing in Voyage of the Damned. He was only written as Donna's grandfather after Howard Atfield, who had played her father in The Runaway Bride and was intended to continue as a recurring character, sadly passed away. When it was clear that Howard would be unable to be in the episode, Davies even considered writing his death into the story arc, with Donna becoming a stronger person after dealing with the loss of her father. But that was ultimately deemed too tragic and too close to home. Howard actually filmed his scenes for Partners in Crime, and those scenes were made available on the Series 4 DVD box set. Planet of the Ood originally featured Ida Scott from The Impossible Planet and Satan Pit as the main character. She would be a member of an investigative team looking into the conditions of the Ood sphere, dismayed to discover her estranged father is involved in Ood operations. The Sontaran two-parter initially had cloning as a much more persistent element, with the Atmos factory workers all being clones. Davies felt the clone idea would be more effective in small doses, which led to the introduction of Clone Martha. The Doctor's daughter had a much more bleak ending, with Jenny originally staying dead. However, as we said earlier in the video, Moffat noted that Davies seemed to have a habit of introducing interesting new characters and then promptly killing them off, which led Davies to change his mind and let her live. Turn Left had a dropped subplot involving Donna getting married and having children. This was intended to add even more drama to Donna's decision to sacrifice herself. Not only would she be giving up her life, but her offspring would be erased from history. Davies, however, became aware that Moffat had similar plans for Donna in The Forest of the Dead, and agreed it was better suited to Moffat's tale. The finale, The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, had massive cuts. RTD's original concept for the Shadow Proclamation had a huge council chamber containing every creature they'd had, including a 15-foot adult adipose and Margaret the Slitheen, now a toddler but still voiced by Annette Badland, who actually recorded dialogue for her scene. This was axed because it would have used up half the episode's budget in about 30 seconds, and Journey's End was supposed to have a cliffhanger ending where a Cyberman would appear in the TARDIS and the Doctor would say "what" 3 times, as he does. This scene was actually shot and included on the DVDs, but they decided to go with a more somber ending to put some distance between Journey's End and the next Doctor. The 10th Doctor's final episode, The End of Time, was almost very different. The other possibility was a much smaller scale, one-part story about the Doctor befriending a family of aliens on Christmas Eve and giving his life to save them from a radiation leak. But obviously, Davies did eventually use the idea of the radiation leak in The End of Time. And here's the big one. An offer was made to David Tennant by Stephen Moffat in regards to Doctor Who's future. If he wanted to stay on and do one more series, they'd be happy to have him. Tennant declined as he decided that he was ready to move on and wanted to watch Moffat's stories as a fan. Had Tennant stayed on for that series, the 11th hour would have started with Amelia Pond meeting an injured 10th Doctor, only for Amy to meet him years later unscathed. The season finale would have revealed that Amelia had met 10 at the end of his life on the brink of regeneration. I think that's pretty damn cool. I think that's a cool concept. David Tennant's tenure as the 10th Doctor is highly regarded among fans and critics alike. He is generally considered one of the greatest incarnations of the Doctor, often ranked alongside Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. The decisions made, the stories told, and even the stories abandoned all contributed to what became one of the most popular eras of modern Doctor Who. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more of Doctor Who's untold stories, and click on this, because that's what YouTube apparently wants you to watch. So I'd listen to them sometimes.